Hello, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to the show. Thank you so much for watching Smart 24 TV, where we drive your business. My name is Anthony Sabale, and I am your host. And this is the point where we get to, of course, look at different sectors in our economy and their contribution to the economy in a whole. And of course, we do bring on board experts in different fields and people who are experienced in the different sectors discuss the contribution of these sectors toward the economy. Now, I'll begin with a quote from a British journalist, John Khalil, who once said that sports has the power to change the world, and it has the power to inspire, the power to unite people, and it is more powerful in governments in breaking down racial barriers. And of course, that cannot be even more right at the moment because we are at a point where the world needs to come together, where we need to celebrate ourselves as human beings, but also get more productive. And one of the ways that actually that people can get more productive is through the sports. Sport is a multi-billion dollar kind of investment all over the world, contributing over 700 billion US dollars globally to the global gross domestic product. And today, joining me on set to discuss sport and its contribution to our economy is none other than Dr. Don Rukara, who is the president of the Uganda Olympic Committee. He's also a lawyer and a family man, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about how he does all that. You're most welcome.
Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Thank you so much. I'm very glad to have you, Donald.
It's a pleasure to be here at Smart TV.
Yeah, it's something when we were, of course, airing this, we were saying we're going to host Donald. People are excited because you are someone who is so diverse. You don't put yourself to one thing, and that's something that really inspires many young people, especially. How do you do it? First of all, like personally, how do you manage to balance work and your lifestyle?
Well, I think, Anthony, first of all, it's about finding things you're passionate about. As you said, initially I started out as a young sports person doing swimming and various other sports in Makere, and then transitioned into professional life. But still, even as a lawyer, you still believe that if you're very passionate about something, you can find kind of what I would call a portfolio career. So you more look like you quoted someone, that quote is also attributed to Mandela, but I would also have one of saying that if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person.
Yeah.
Two, if you kind of look at yourself, your different things that you're doing and you're passionate about, then you kind of have a dashboard approach to your work. If you kind of follow time, keep time, but also manage the load. It's important to manage that load. Then I think overall it's easy to do things that you're passionate about. Yeah. So for me, law is something I like and working in areas of social justice and human rights. But also sports is something I'm equally passionate about. So I spend, you could say, close to 80% of my spare time in sports.
Wow, very interesting. Very interesting. You talk about your experience before you became the president of the Uganda Olympic Committee.
Yeah.
You've been also in the Swimmers Federation. What was your journey like? Where did it start? Did you, from childhood, see yourself as someone very much into sports, or it just actually dawned on you when you?
Well, interesting question. When you say sports, what probably dawned on me at that time was getting into sports administration, because there are different facets of sport, and I'm happy that you're also talking about another emerging aspect of business and sport and how sport contributes to the economy. But if I was to go back saying that I began by, because there are different types of sport which we can dive into later, but I began by doing sport at a very, if you wish, recreational level. And that's one thing we should also talk about, the business aspect of having to build facilities. So because I was just in many ways lucky that we grew up in Makere University at that time, which had and still does have a number of sports facilities. So having a swimming pool, basketball courts, squash courts, volleyball, badminton, just round the corner. As children of our lecturers, we had access to these facilities. We didn't have so many coaches, interestingly, like now, but we had access. So as a result, from age almost 3, 4, I was ready swimming, playing basketball, playing badminton with the university students. So you sort of play around with them. And from that kind of, let's say, recreational aspect of sport, then when you start growing up, then you begin to sort of say that, oh, okay, I feel I enjoy swimming more, I do squash more. So then I started kind of focusing more on certain particular sports. And that's also something about their parents would advise, that expose your children to as many sports as, I don't know what sports you do, you do as many sports as possible, and then later on you can specialize. Almost like academics, you do broad subjects, but then as you go higher, the funnel becomes kind of narrower. So from that perspective, then I started focusing more on swimming and squash and a bit of basketball. But I started swimming more competitively, from the age of probably 9, 8, 10, juniors, and then swimming for the country later on as you grow older. So at that point, I wasn't really thinking so much about sports administration. It was more about active sports participation. So did that for most of the 80s and 90s. And swam. Unfortunately, in those days, things were not that self-evident. So we never had the same opportunities to represent Uganda as some of the swimmers and other people did. And I think the highest we ever went was University Games. And then later on in that journey, then you begin to slow down. Of course, you get older. And then actually, when it comes to my journey into sports administration, it was purely accidental. It wasn't a very deliberate sort of thing you thought that you could get into sports administration. But one nice Saturday morning, I was kind of called upon by some of the swimmers. Oh, you're our swimmer, you're into the League of Come, and then there's an election. And then, the rest is history.
Wow.
So from that point, we started moving more from what we call on the field play to off the field administration. And that's an interesting transition area also, as we might be discussing, for some of our athletes out there, that they can actually find a career after they've finished their active sports activities. They can actually transition into management, into ownership, into operations of sports.
Yeah. Well, very, very interesting. Oftentimes, when people, for example, are in school, I don't know, maybe the mentality is changing, but when someone is very good at sports, they think, they're going to suck at class. And that is what's the mentality most. For example, there are kids who play there's a football they make out of fiber and all that.
We all started with that way. And
exactly.
Football is arguably one of the most popular sports in Uganda and across the globe. But we all played that kind of plastic football.
Yes. And most parents don't actually support them from the start. And this is where we see many talents going undiscovered.
Without a doubt, yes.
Exactly. So what is your advice to, for example, parents that are bringing up children with these talents, with these passions, and they're trying to struggle with balancing school and their talents, and their parents are telling them the only way to go is you have to stay in school, you have to finish your degree, and they're not giving them the opportunity to actually invest in their talent.
I think what we need to keep in mind is, you're right, it's about mindset change. There is no doubt that academics are important, but we have a plethora of evidence that doing sport does not in any way degenerate or affect academics. I did sports all throughout, but I did one of the most demanding courses after my career at the time, doing law. So there is, in my view, it's about moderation. You asked me earlier, how do you balance? I think one thing we have to teach our kids out there, as all parents, it's about everything we do is about doing things in moderation. If we do things in moderation and pay attention to different things at the right time, then you can actually do your sport, do your academics, you can do your family life, you can do your business. But also you can do sport as a business. And we can come back to that later. So to me, what I would advise the parents out there, and even the schools, I'm happy that the Ministry of Education and Sports has recently reactivated the policy of having sports in schools, not just to say it's focusing on forms, because you need to build a holistic individual. So for example, one thing that I regret when I look back. I don't know about yourself. Things like different languages, foreign languages. When we were in school, we used to take for granted learning French. Yeah, but as you grow older and get into the world of work, you find that having an additional language is something that is important. But also things like building a holistic human being. So who is this holistic human being? You look at your spiritual aspect, your physical, your intellectual, your even the arts, so emotional. So for example, I don't know whether you play a musical instrument.
Unfortunately, I don't.
Yes. You see. So you can imagine you go for a media conference somewhere. You can't even go out and play a game of golf with your colleagues, or a game of squash, or swim in the evening, or go to the gym. So it's about building this holistic aspect. Even before getting into the playing of sports seriously, or the playing of instrument, but just building someone who, and because even when you look at, for example, the aspects of music, there are so many aspects of the discipline, the way the music is created, the way it's written, that you can actually apply in your day-to-day life. Or the lessons. Now, sport teaches very many life skills. It teaches you to be on time. Yeah, if for example not on time, you'll get a walkover, or you forfeit the game, or you get penalized. You have to play by the rules. There are set rules. So in life, that's the same thing. Like here at Smart TV, there are rules. You must play within a kind of structured environment, and sport teaches you that kind of discipline, respect, and all those. So to me, even before we get into the business side, the more serious side of sport, or these other what I'd call soft skills of learning a musical, how to play a musical instrument, how to dance, how to speak another language, and how to do other things. You may be getting to learning how to use your hands for carpentry, whatever. I think here we have taken education in a very kind of narrow perspective. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have in our economy. Because we all can't become white-collar job people. But rather, you need to think about how you can creatively use other skills, other skill sets, other talents to engage. So to me, I would advise the parents out there that engage not only in sport, but other things that create a holistic child that can actually go out into the world and flourish.
We're going to take a very quick break, but before we go into the break, we want to look at the sports sector in Uganda. Currently, I understand that we've recovered from so many things like the COVID-19 pandemic. The global economies haven't also been doing well. But in your own view, in just an overview, do you think we are on a journey of recovery? Is there hope that sports is going to be better in Uganda?
Definitely, radio sports is better in Uganda. So we had at the beginning of 2020, 2021, the onset of COVID. It came in initially as a small, mild, flu. People thought, within 14 days we'll be back, but unfortunately it took what it took, 2 years or 2.5. It's still on, but I think we're learning how to cope with it. The Olympics were one of the biggest casualties in our sports sector, which were for the first time postponed from 2020 to 2021. And there was a bit of a disruption in the sports industry. However, we have seen that there has been a rebound. And also, we'd like to thank you guys in the TV industry and the media industry, who's also transitioning into media and can talk about the role of TV and sports. But definitely, from where our standpoint with the opening up of the country, sports has returned, and we see it in recovery, and I think it can only get better. There are a number of things we can discuss that need to be strengthened, whether it's the law, the facilities, engagement with schools, other aspects of nutrition and sports injury, sports medicine research. You see, it depends at what level you're playing sport. As I said earlier, there's the recreational aspect, the amateur aspect, which a lot of us are doing now, but we're transitioning into professional sport, and then also sport for development, sport for peace. How can you use sport? You made a very interesting quote at the beginning of the program. How can also sport be used as a tool of soft diplomacy, soft power? So there are different aspects of how sport is and can be.
I remember when we had tensions between Rwanda and Uganda, and then our team had to go and play a certain
Exactly.
tournament. I think it was the Silverbacks.
Yes.
And that kind of creates.
It breaks the ice.
Yes,
Even
exactly.
North Korea, South Korea, they had a joint team. So even in the World Cup, you saw some adversaries in the political arena playing on the field of play. And even this recent World Cup that ended, some people who typically not see eye to eye in the political arena were able to come together and play and enjoy each other's company on the field of play. So there are many facets of sport. And one of the things that we're trying to do together with other stakeholders is to amplify that sport is not just the recreational aspect, but there are other aspects, as we can discuss later on, that can show that there's a dividend of engaging in sport. Even the health aspects, we can talk about non-communicable diseases. So by engaging in sports, by inference, you'll be reducing on your budget for the non-communicable diseases that now are beginning to, as the economy improves, as society improves, then we begin to see lifestyle diseases coming into play. And sports becomes an issue. So there's sport for life, sport for health, sport for competition. So there are different aspects that we can.
Thank you very much. We're still talking with Dr. Okari, and we're talking the sports business here in Uganda. Well, Uganda is, like he has mentioned, on a journey of improvement already. Looking at our participation in the games in Tokyo and the Olympic Games, we fetched 4 medals, including 1 gold medal. And of course, many other achievements have been achieved. Regarding the performance of that particular Olympics competition, we were the second in Africa, just after Kenya there. So it shows that we are on a journey of improvement. However, sports has not been recognized that much, especially when it comes to budget allocation. For example, in the year 2019-2020, we had only about 25 billion, and in the subsequent 3 years, the budget has continued to go down and much further down, looking at what is being financed currently. We're going to come back and talk about this and more. Sports financing. Are we putting in enough so that we can get what we want out of the sports industry in Uganda? My name is Anthony. You're watching The Point. Stay with us.